Welcome to the Feed My Sheep Foundation Bible Study video channel. Today we're going to continue our Bible study in the book of Job. And with this video we're on chapter 18. And as we go forward reading, we're going to see in this chapter one of Job's friends has come back around. The friend called Bildad, who was a Shuhite. And Bildad had said in the previous chapter, he has said many things in reference to Job being a hypocrite. And we know that Job was not a hypocrite, because a hypocrite is one that says and does not what the Lord tells him to do. And Jesus addressed the hypocrites in the New Testament whenever he was speaking in reference to them with the scribes and the Pharisees. So chapter 18, it begins with Bildad saying, "Then answered Bildad the Shuhite," after Job spoke in chapter 16 and 17. He says, "How long will it be? Are you making end of words? Mark, and afterwards we will speak." Okay. So wherefore are we counted as beasts and reputed vile in your sight? Okay. So now he's speaking in reference to what Job has said about them, and having the audacity to say that, because Job is saying what he's saying about them basically trying to dispute it. But there's no dispute to it, because we know what God said at the beginning. We have to always reflect back on that. At the beginning of Job, whenever Job had the conversation, whenever God had this conversation with Satan, in chapter 2, in verse 3, the Lord said unto Satan, "Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that fears God and eschews evil, runs away from evil, and still he holds fast his integrity." Okay, so that was what God said about Job. He knew Job, and Job knew God. So now going on to what Bildad has to say in reference to what Job said about his so-called friends. Verse 4 says, "He tears himself in his anger. Shall the earth be forsaken for thee? And shall the rock be removed out of his sight?" Now he's making a comment in reference to Job tearing himself in his anger. And that's only because of the negativity that his friends have come around him and started to spew out at him. And of course, and the experience that he's having, on top of that, and it's making him negative. It's making him, he's internalizing the experience to be, something of the reason why he's having it as his fault. And so then he says here, "Yes, the light of the wicked shall be put out, and the spark of his fire shall not shine." Now he's referring to Job as being wicked, okay, and his light is being put out. And again, the friends, they speak indirectly also. We see that all throughout everything that they're saying. And he says, "The light shall be dark in his tabernacle, and his candle shall be put out with him. The steps of his strength shall be straitened, and his own counsel shall cast him down." Now listen to how they had the audacity to say that, and all the mocking and judgment and persecution that they've placed upon him. This is the friend has the audacity to say that his own counsel shall cast him down. And he's right. There's his own counsel, which was them at one point in time, has him cast very far down, because it was a negative counsel that he was receiving from his three friends. And he says, "For he has cast it into a net by his own feet, and he walks upon a snare." And I mean, if this isn't pure mockery, at the expense of his persecution, and also as they began to go forward persecuting also. Now he's speaking in reference to it. And he says, "The snare, the trap shall take him by the heel, and the robber shall prevail against him." And unfortunately, that is what's happening, because they are the snare, the trap, and the robber, because they come with this unwanted counsel that is not of God. And he's internalizing it. And then he says, "The snare is laid for him in the ground, and a trap for him in the way." And knowing that he's speaking of himself. He's speaking of himself and the friends that have surrounded Job with all that negativity. He says, "Terror shall make him afraid of every side, and shall drive him to his feet." And that's exactly what they've been doing. "His strength shall be hunger, bitter bitten, and destruction shall be ready at his side. It shall devour the strength of his skin, even the firstborn of death shall devour his strength. And who needs to hear something like that when they're going through persecution? But again, these are his so-called friends that he's finding out who they really are at a moment in time when he's going through what he's going through. And he says, it shall devour the strength of his skin, even the firstborn of death shall devour his strength. His confidence shall be rooted out of his tabernacle, and it shall bring him to the king of terrors. It shall dwell in his tabernacle, because it is none of his. Brimstone shall be scattered upon his habitation, and his roots shall be dried up beneath, and above shall his branch be cut off. His remembrance shall perish from the earth, and he shall have no name in the street. He shall be driven from light into darkness and chased out of the world. And that's basically what they're doing to him, because he's wishing and hoping for death. And whereas, like, again, as I stated in previous chapters, they could have came and encouraged him, telling him, the Lord would never leave you nor forsake you. Just saying anything. You are the light of the world as God has created you. And you've been a faithful man. They could have encouraged him, lifted him up to the heavens, to the God of heaven, and said, we're going to pray for you, we're going to pray with you, but we don't get to see any of that. All we get to see is them starting to accuse him, persecute him, mock him, and judge him, and making him feel like what he is experiencing is because of his bad behavior, as if they hadn't done anything bad. Okay, never. And so again, we get to see what negative friends look like, and the experience it can cause a person to begin to go through. So verse 19, he says, he shall neither have son nor nephew among his people, nor any remaining in his dwellings. And they that come after him shall be astonished at his day, as they that went before were frightened. Surely such are the dwellings of the wicked, and this is the place of him that knows not God. Now you see they're saying he doesn't even know God. And again, we have to always reflect back on the conversation God had about Job with Satan and how he was faithful. And you have got to know God to be faithful to him, because he says, is it impossible to please God? It's impossible to please God without faith, okay? So we know that Job definitely knows God, but here we see his friend telling him that, because of what he's going through, you cannot possibly know God, because God wouldn't allow this to be happening to you, and this and that and this and that. But nevertheless, neither one of them know what is truly taking place at that moment in time in Job's life. All right. God bless you. God be with you. And that was chapter 18 of the book of Job, as we continue to go forward, looking at what it looks like to be persecuted as a saint, as a faithful one in the earth. Okay. And we can see how Jesus Christ, the greatest example of persecutions that he experienced when he was here in the earth, in the flesh, doing many miracles, supernatural, and still today being persecuted, unfortunately, with all his greatness and his goodness that he has done for mankind, and coming and being the Savior, but still, man still has something to say in reference to that. Again, part of Satan's kingdom, the kingdom of darkness, speaking against the kingdom of light, is what it always is. Wanting that kingdom of light to curse God whenever there's, no way for us to curse him, because he's blessed. Even if we did say something in reference to him badly, it wouldn't be true, because again, he's so blessed. All right, so God bless you, God be with you, and I'll see you on our next Bible study as we continue to go forward with the Feed My Sheep Foundation Bible Study video channel.